what I have found, Ryan, is once everyone understands the mission of your company, it's easier to get them excited and highly engaged in doing whatever part they have to move that mission forward.
This is Right About Now with Ryan Alford, a Radcast Network production. We are the #1 business show on the planet with over 1 million downloads a month. Taking the BS out of business for over 6 years and over 400 episodes. You ready to start snapping necks and cashing checks? Well, it starts right about now.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Right About Now. We're always talking about what's important now. Hey, you know we're always right, too. Well, at least our guests can be. I don't know if I'm always right, but I've always got an opinion. And, you know, here's what I know. There are some things that are tried and true, and I really like effectiveness. I love it because I'm in business. I love for me to be effective. I like for my listeners to be effective because that's us helping you. And that's why I've got leadership consultant. And he's been a part of a book and a guide and coaching. You've probably heard of this, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He is Todd Davis. What's up, Todd?
Hey, how are you, Ryan? Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Hey, I like effectiveness. Anybody that's been with the company as long as you have has to know a thing or two about that, if nothing else, right?
Exactly. I'm not perfect at it, but I at least have the instruction manual.
I know. If we all, what do they say? But doctors sometimes have the worst health habits, but, but something tells me you've got, as being, the chief people officer for the number of years that you've been or were, and now, leadership consulting, I'm sure you apply a lot of what you teach, if I had to guess.
I do.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think myself, I'm 47, and I think our audience, we have it all over 25 to 50, skews male. I think if you're anywhere in the last, in my range or around there, that book rings familiar, if not been on the reading list. I mean, it's really stood the test of time, hasn't it, Todd?
Really has. It was Dr. Stephen R. Covey wrote the book about 35 years ago. It has sold over 40 million copies to date and continues to sell thousands of copies every month. And I had, just real quick here, I had an interesting experience 2 weeks ago. I was in another state and working with a client, and a gentleman came up to me after and said and this gentleman was probably mid-50s, said his son, who had just graduated college in Portland, called him the night before and said, very seriously, "Hey, Dad, I just read the greatest book. I'm going to send it to you. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People." and we both started laughing because, to your point, the book's been around forever, but this young college grad was just finding it so empowering and so useful today. And so, yeah, it's a timeless classic, if you will, because it's based on principles of effectiveness.
Yes, exactly. And I do think in a world where, with YouTube, the proliferation of new media, we have all these tactics at hand, right? There's all these things to do and lots of people coaching what to do, but you can do a lot of things and not be effective. It's a really key component, because I think sometimes we get in the tactics habit and the check in the box, but it's like, what was the outcome of all those tactics? That's what I've always loved about the book, is the effectiveness.
It's so true. I like to explain it as if you visualize the compass over the clock is how we get effectiveness. In other words, yes, it's important to get a lot of things done, and it's important to get things done within a timely manner, but what are the things we're getting done? Are we getting those things that are really going to move our lives or the lives of our team or our organization forward? And so it's the compass first, the direction we're headed, over the clock. Clock's important. Got to have deadlines, but let's make sure we're heading in the right direction first. And that's how I think of and how we define effectiveness at FranklinCovey.
I think sometimes numbers get glossed over. I can be guilty of this. 100,000 of this, 50,000 of that, 40 million books sold. I mean, go get a room with 100 or 200 people and like look around and remind yourself how many people that is. And then think about 40 million. What an accomplishment.
Yeah, it's another quick story just because it's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are just launching, we update the content or the course, not the book itself. We don't change how many habits there are, but the application of those we update in the courses we teach about every 10 years. And we just launched our new Reimagine 7 Habits. And I was in another city in a hotel delivering an overview event. And this woman her name is Sylvia, a worker in the hotel, she came up when she learned we were from FranklinCovey. And she said, "I'll be right back." And I thought, okay, did we not pay our bill last time we were here? What's going on? And then she came back with the Spanish version of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It had been weathered and used up, and she carried it around in her purse. And she went on for, I'll tell you, 10 minutes telling us, my colleague and I, how this book had changed her life and how she led her family with it and how it helped her in her career. And it was inspiring. I almost thought I was being set up for a minute. It was so inspiring. I'm
sure. And I know there's probably countless stories of people, and I've seen some on your website doing research for this this interview and reminding myself, of even some of those tenets. But Todd, let's set the table, as we get into the here and the now, but talk about, you've been with FranklinCovey, what, 35 plus years? Is that what?
Not quite. I'm starting my 29th year. Starting my 29th year.
29th, but still almost 30 years with FranklinCovey. Maybe talk about the trajectory of your career and how it, just has paralleled with everything that's happened.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for asking that. So I was in the medical industry for many years. I was in a recruiting role. I recruited physicians and medical personnel for about 10 years. And then some friends and I formed a small human resource outsourcing group. So we would contract with companies out here in Utah where I live to provide their human resource services. Now, I didn't have human resource experience, but I had recruiting experience. And then we had another friend who had done employment law, who was an attorney. We had another friend who had done benefits. And so we would contract, and what was then called the Covey Leadership Center was one of our clients. And so I would recruit for them and find them consultants and salespeople and things like that. And they said one day, "Hey, we want to bring recruiting in-house." And I thought, and I had recently read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This was like 30 years ago. And I thought, well, dang, I think I might want to look into that. So I joined Covey Leadership Center as their recruiter or their recruitment manager. And then we, long story short, we merged with Franklin Quest, which was the beginnings of the Franklin Day Planner that some people might remember your parents having or whatever. And we merged those two companies about 27 years ago, which became FranklinCovey. And I was in various positions, and then shorten this up, our CEO came to me about 20 years ago, and the head of people services or human resources had left, said, "We'd like you to apply for this position." And I said, "Well, that's great. I don't have any HR background. I've recruited, but that's," and he said, "I know, we think you're really good with people." And they didn't give me the position, but they had me apply, and I applied with several other candidates, and I was really honored to be selected. And so I surrounded myself with really talented HR people, and for 18 years ran the human resource function of the company. And then the last couple of years now, I've been out teaching others how to implement all of these things that I had seen work so well for our clients or for our department and for other clients that I'd worked with.
We'll talk, and I want to dig into, how 7 Habits what's stayed the same, what's changed, like you said, the application. But,
yeah,
Todd, I'd love to get your perspective, Chief People Officer. To me, that's an interesting, I hear that term now, and I think they know, I'll just call you, since you're a man, the king of HR. In some ways, and so to frame, I love the marketing spin we've put on all the titles as a marketer. But at the end of the day, what has that position been like for you? Like what makes you a people person, and what's been like your guiding principle in making that successful?
Yeah, that's great context setting. You should do this for a living, Ryan. You're really good at this. To your point. So a few years ago, when I was still in the Chief People Officer role, one of our our publisher, Simon & Schuster, who published 7 Habits, they thought it would be a really cool idea to have the chief people officer of the people company write a book. So I wrote a book, became a bestseller, not because anybody knows who Todd Davis is, but because this topic was so profound, and it's the question you asked. The book is called Get Better, 15 Proven Practices to Build Effective Relationships at Work. And my whole premise in the years that I had almost 2 decades experience as the chief people officer was that, as Jim Collins, the leadership guru, says, you got to have the right people on the bus. That's true. But it's actually, and it's actually the nature of the relationships between those people that makes teams and organizations effective. And so in my role as chief people officer, and anybody who's head of their human resource function, I view this as you're more or less, sorry for the sports analogy, but you're more or less the quarterback of the culture. Everybody, it takes everyone to form the culture, but you're the person who really reminds people, helps to set the vision for where you want the culture to go, including what we call things. Like you said, we can put a marketing spin on things, but I was adamant that we not call it human resources, that we call it people services, because I wanted the team that I led to be reminded every day as they came to work, they were in the business of serving the people at FranklinCovey. Their clients were all of our associates. And then I wanted the role to be chief people officer, not because I wanted to be the grand poobah, but because I wanted to remind myself, is this about the people? Sometimes people equate the term human resources with kind of the policy wonks, or the necessary evil we have to keep all the human resource laws and guidances and all that. And those things are important, but it's really about partnering with your team, your colleagues, to move or grow the business and be, as you started out, be effective in what you're doing.
Yeah. And it is supremely important. And, one question I want to have for you, Todd, that it may not be expected, but because I want to transition to kind of, back to the effective, we'll get into all, but it's when I think about a chief people officer and me being, CEO and owner of multiple companies,
right?
I see what's sort of happened, and I've seen interesting comments from even top Google executives, like the pendulum. Like when you own a company, you serve clients, right? But when you have a company, you need your people and you need to serve them to help you serve the clients. And I've seen even a few of the executives that have come out that said maybe it swung too far to serving the people versus the client. And talk to me about the balance of those two things. And I think it was through the lens of things that happened with COVID, the work from home, the not work from home, the benefits, the nap pods, to use like a Google thing, where you want to take care of your people. You have to take care of your people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we got to serve the client, or we don't have no people.
You're exactly right. No, I couldn't agree more.
But coming from sitting in your shoes, though, I can understand the delicate balance of those things. And maybe it's just a broad question, your perspective on that pendulum.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think you just nailed it. And so in my experience, what I have viewed is that, first and foremost, deciding what, you've headed up many companies. What is the mission of that organization? What is the mission of your organization? I think it starts there. Is it worthy? Are we doing something that's adding value to the client, to the world, to our society? And most companies are. I haven't met a company that isn't. But it's then refining that mission statement and that mission and vision for the company, so that our associates, these employees that we want to serve as well, that they're as excited and as on board as you are as the CEO or as the leader. So what I have found, Ryan, is once everyone understands the mission of your company, you still have to do a lot of other things, but it's easier to get them excited and highly engaged in doing whatever part they have to move that mission forward. And so it really doesn't become, in my experience, a question for the leader of, do I serve the client? Do we focus on the client, or do we focus on our employees? No, we are all focusing on the client, because our employees are so excited to know, hey, I'm a piece of this. Whatever I do, I see how it links to that bigger mission of the company, and so I make a difference. And when leaders can focus on communicating to their associates their worth and potential so clearly that they come to see it in themselves, then we have one focus, and that's serving the client. But my team and the associates know they are a critical component of that, and they find value in that. They find excitement in that. And yes, they have to be paid well, and they have to have the right working conditions and have the right benefits, but their incentive and their motivation is to be a part of something that matters.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of it. And I think that clarity, because I've even known and had a lot of moments where that wasn't clear enough, and that's been ineffective. And I see it, know it. I guess just to close the book on that question, Todd, would be like what you said is absolutely right. What do you make of those that say, though the pendulum swung too far? That, you know, like what do you think has triggered that? Because I have sensed, not with really about my own organization. We have a small company. Like I'm not saying that this didn't exist or something, but it just what I see, what I hear is, you know, it's like maybe the employees feel like, what can the company do for me versus what can I do for the client? Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess just to close the book on that, I just love your perspective.
Well, I think that's a great question, and I know what I'm going to suggest takes time, but this is what we work with our clients with, and I've seen it produce amazing results over and over again. We have a client or a situation where in their minds the pendulum has swung too far, and they've got a group of people, good people, but who are more focused on what's in it for me than what do I need to do to serve. It's taking the time to understand those people. It's moving as a leader. It's moving your mindset from I bet they just want an increase because they've been given awards their whole life and they're this, spoiled little kid, whatever, to I wonder why they're not more engaged in the business that we do and the work that we do. I wonder why they're not more inspired. And so it's taking the time, and a lot of leaders, I won't say don't like this answer, but they realize, okay, I got to slow down and I've got to get to know my people. What's important to you, Jen? What's important to you, Sam? What's important to, what motivates you? And honestly, if I talk to a Jen or a Sam and they say, all I care about is money, making money, well, then they're probably not the person for my team, because I want to find out what part of what we do excites them and make sure that they understand how critical they are to that. So I'm kind of going back to what I said a minute ago, but when the pendulum is way over there, to your point, I think you got to slow down. Dr. Covey used to say, with people, fast is slow and slow is fast. Take time, understand what excites them, what motivates them, what energizes them about the business, and then make sure that they have enough of that going on so that they feel this ongoing connection with the work that you're all trying to do to move your organization forward.
Yep. And I think that's fair. And I love it's actually very tactical advice of the mindset of not making assumptions. And that one little trigger of, not making an assumption, but if you presume something, you tend to make it true,
Absolutely.
Presumptions are effective for one thing, and that's, verifying what you already think, but not necessarily getting to the bottom of something.
No, that is what you just shared, Ryan. That is the foundation for the 7 habits. Before we even get into the habits, we talk about our paradigms or our mindsets. And if I'm a micromanager, okay, everybody can relate to that because they've either been one or they've worked for one. But if I'm a micromanager, how do I see my team? We call this the see-do-get model. Well, if I'm a micromanager, I see my team as incompetent. And to your point, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I see my team as incompetent, well, then what do? I do everything myself, or I hover over and criticize everything they do. And if that's what I do, what kind of results do we get? Well, we get pretty poor, mediocre results at best. And then what do I say to myself as the micromanager? See, they are incompetent. I got to micromanage even more. And to your point, it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy of what I'm seeing, versus if I see people as capable and talented, well, then what do? Well, then I take time to get to know them and what's important to them and what inspires them and how do I motivate them and make sure that they connect with our larger mission, and then it goes on and we get greater results. So, sorry, I get passionate about this. I can take.
I love see-do-get. I'm gonna that will stick with me. I remember a different frameworks, like certain things, but I will, the SDG will be with me.
So big.
Yeah,
Doesn't really roll off the tongue, the acronym, but yes, you do get.
Talking with Todd Davis, he is, let's just call him the forever chief people officer, but he's a senior leadership consultant.
I don't know how the current chief people officer would feel about that, but yes, thank you.
Chief people guy, is what we'll call him. Todd, talk to me about what you guys are up to now with 7 Habits, how it's evolved, the trainings, leadership, and all that, how you're working with people.
Thank you. Well, the 7 Habits has been around for 35 years, like we mentioned, since Stephen first wrote about them. They are all based on principles of effectiveness. For example, habit 1 is to be proactive, and it's based on the principle of choice. And going back to your see, do, get that you're never going to forget now, one way to see it is, hey, I can't predict how things are going to turn out, so I'm just going to kind of go with the flow. That's a common paradigm. But a more effective paradigm is, wait a minute, I can choose, and I'm actually responsible for my own choices. So I can choose the life that I want. I can choose the career that I want. I can choose the outcome that I want, and I'm responsible for those choices. Now, there's a lot of things I don't have control over, but there are many things I can influence. And most importantly, we learn in this habit, I can choose my response to any situation. And that, I remember, Ryan, when I first read the 7 Habits 30 years ago, I can still see that sentence on the page. You can choose your response to any situation. In a world when there's so much we can't influence or control, to know that we can choose our response. So habit 1's and a habit 1 for a reason, because it's up to us to decide if we want to take control of our lives or if we want the outside world or influences to control our lives. And then I won't go deep into each habit, but habits 2 and 3 work together with that. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. It's based on the principle of purpose. So if I'm going to take charge of my life, well, then what do I want to do with my life? And then habit 3, put first things first, is based on the principle of focus. Okay, if I've decided what I'm going to do with my life, well, I got to start prioritizing. What do I got to do first, second, and third? And these first 3 habits surround what's called the private victory. It's where we become trustworthy. If you know people, and I'm sure you do, that take responsibility for their lives, they know where they're going, and they prioritize and focus on the most important things, they're pretty trustworthy people. And it helps move us to being independent. We're independent and ready now to collaborate with others. And then that's where the next 3 habits come in. Habit 4 is to think win-win. It's a mindset based on the principle of abundance. Habit 5 is to seek first to understand. That's based on the principle of respect. And then habit 6 is to synergize, based on the habit of creative collaboration. And those are where we build trust with others. And those move us to what we call interdependence. And then the 7th habit surrounding all those habits is habit 7, sharpen the saw, based on the principle of renewal. It's where we take time to invest in ourselves. Your listeners that are taking time out of their busy schedules to learn, because they learn from Ryan all the time, they're investing in themselves, not because they're selfish, but because by doing so, they can do that much more for everybody else. So that was the Reader's Digest condensed version of the 7 habits. And each decade or so that we reimagine it, we don't change the habits or their principles, but the applications, we update them based on life's current situations. Sorry to take so much time, but that
was perfect. Okay. And you know what it made me think, Todd? It was, I'm on social media a lot, and thinking like leadership coaches that I see and variations of quotes and principles. 80% of it has spun out of that book, I think, and those top line thoughts. Now I'm not saying people are copycats. They've added their sauce on top of it or whatever, but those core principles capture a lot of the overall sentiment of what drives sort of effective behavior.
Well, Ryan, that's a really good point. And they are copycats, but Stephen said he was a copycat. And let me clarify. Stephen made the point all the time. He did not invent the 7 habits. What he did, and I had the great honor of working with him for many years before he passed away about 12 years ago, but he clarified what he did was he identified those people and those teams and those organizations that seemed to continually be getting ahead in a good way, getting the results they sought to get. And he studied what they did on a consistent basis, and then identified those principles that had always been at work, but that, he just identified them, named them as habits, and put them in a construct that we could talk about them, and start to implement them in our lives. So he even made the comment that he didn't invent them, he discovered them. And so I think all of the iterations that different people use, they are just different ways to look at these lifelong principles that will always be in effect.
Yeah. And I just think, I don't know, it's, you can choose the response to any situation. I think it's so powerful. Like all of those ring true, but I come back to that one because I think about myself at times. I think about like what I see, like we've empowered a lot of things but ourselves at times. And, we give power, apply power when we don't realize that we get to choose, whether you're biblical or not, believing in free will, the power to choose. And I think we've been conditioned, or it's at times maybe that, it's out of your control, but man, it's empower. It's the way we empower people is for them to understand that statement.
I couldn't agree more. I will be asked often in the leadership space we've been in for 40 years now. FranklinCovey's been around for 40 years. And I will be asked often, so what habits are most critical for a leader? Well, after saying all of them, but for me, if I had to whittle it down, it would be habit 1 for all the reasons you just said, coupled with habit 5. Habit 5 is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And it's not just about being a nice person, but it is truly, and I'm sure you've experienced this, I have so much greater influence, not power, but influence with someone if I take time to understand them first. Seek first to understand. Going back to the earlier example, we were talking about the pendulum being swung too far sometimes. So first of all, if I realize I have a choice, okay, I can tell myself I'm a busy CEO or busy, I don't have time to meet with people, or I can say, well, wait a minute, people are my business. Our organization is made up of great people, so all right, that's my choice. And now, habit 5, I'm going to take time to sit down with Joe or Susan and say, hey, tell me what's important to you, and tell me why you do things this way or that way, and then really listen. Don't listen with the intent to reply. We teach this in Habit 5 because we are all programmed, and you might be doing it right now. Maybe you're nodding and looking up and you really think about what you're going to say next. I'm teasing you. But that's how we all are. We listen, but we're already, in most cases, formulating a response. And I don't think it comes from a bad place. I think we're fixers. We're helpers. And so we hear just enough of the conversation to think, oh, I know what to say. I know how to fix this. I know how to help. And the deepest need of the human heart is to feel understood. Dr. Covey said that, and I couldn't agree more. The deepest need of the human heart is to feel understood. So when you're truly trying to understand someone, just suspend your opinion. Don't throw it away. Suspend your opinion long enough to just hear the other person, really understand where they're coming from. And leaders who do that, they have so much more information now to help move their teams, their organizations forward. So habit 1, be proactive, and then habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. There's no stopping a leader who models those habits really well.
No. And I added, I've been writing down notes. I take notes when I have the interviews for to go back to highlight clips and different things like that. But I added a spin, I would almost argue if you seek first to understand, you won't even have to explain to be understood. You'll then be understood, it's to go to level deeper because, and it applies to the whole, listen with the intent to just listen.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, you know what? I think about countless times when I would be meeting with a leader or an employee who was upset about something in my office, and I'm not kidding. They'd be there for an hour. Out of that hour, I probably spoke 10 minutes at most. They spoke the rest of the time, and then they would get up and they would say, Todd, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't do much. But to your point, if you really take the time to understand, people are pretty good at solving their own problems if they have a sounding board, if they have someone who will really listen. It's so rare that when we find someone who will do that, we can kind of come to our own conclusions, including the employee who has kind of been in it for themselves, with that pendulum swung too far. If you really really listen to them, they will start realizing on their own, oh, I've kind of been all about me and what's in it for me, and I haven't really been thinking about how do I contribute to the organization I'm a part of. And so you couldn't be more right, in my opinion, in my experience.
I love that. Talk to me, what are some of the nuances maybe that have changed as far as application that maybe people wouldn't be familiar with?
Yeah. So just the practicality. Now, it's always been in our courses, they've always been practical, but even more so, this development team that put this together, they have focused intently on, okay, you learn this fire hose of information in 2 days, and it can be spread out, learned spread out, or it can be taught concentrated. But regardless, you have all of this information. It's so amazing. What do I do with it? What do I do with it? And so just the practicality, this 7 Habits 5.0, there are things that I can take away that afternoon or that day and start applying them. This may sound too simplistic, but there's an activity we do in Habit 1, be proactive. I can choose my response. And they take these statements around, they think of a situation in their life that is challenging right now. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a project, and they write a statement, while I can't, ... I can, ... So while I can't change the project that I've been assigned, I can look for some additional resources that have expertise in this area to help me. So it just tries to start training our mind to think of, there are things I can't change, but there's always something I can do or I can influence. So that's just one example of the practical nature of the activities that they're doing. And I've been teaching this for a couple of weeks now. It just launched October 28th. I've already had email upon email from participants coming back saying, I cannot believe how helpful this was. I was able to overcome this big obstacle. I was able to get the team thinking about this differently. So it's just the practicality, I would say, is the most insightful thing of this newest version. Just the relevant application and how I can use it in the challenges I'm dealing with today.
Todd, as we finish up here, talk to me about the types of companies that you're working with. What's that ideal profile? For someone listening that, could benefit from your services. I mean, if nothing else, we better have sold another, million books, but, go back and read, because I circled, I think I got an old copy somewhere. I know I do. I'm like, dang, I have 4 boys. It's going to be mandatory reading for them. But talk to me about that profile and what you're doing and how you're helping them.
I don't want this to be a flippant answer, but we're not industry specific by any means. So my flippant answer would be any organization that has people.
Right.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we do work. I was going to say we don't work with really small companies, but we actually do. But we tend to work with those organizations that have 500 or more employees, but I'm thinking of some examples right now of some organizations that have less than that. So I don't want to rule them out. People, I guess I would sum it as this: organizations, and then I just did a keynote for an organization last week that has 20,000 employees. So organizations of all sizes, but I would sum it up as this: organizations whose top leadership realizes that it starts with the people. And if you're a CEO listening or a senior executive listening, and you totally buy into, because it's true, that it all starts with the people, regardless of what your organization does. Interesting, AI, which is taking over our jobs. we just looked at a survey, 290 large businesses around the world, not just the nation, around the world, that use AI on a regular basis. They still had in their top 3 needed skills that they didn't have: interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence. AI doesn't teach emotional intelligence. Now, FranklinCovey 7 Habits, we call it the 7 Habits effect. If I had to summarize, okay, Todd, what skill does it develop more than anything else if people apply it? It is emotional intelligence. It's interpersonal skills. And those are everything we've been talking about here. So organizations that recognize that are the organizations that we work with.
Todd, I vaguely remember that maybe you guys had a sub-segment of 7 Habits that did this, but whether you did or didn't, it could be applied to marriage.
Oh, we used to have 7 Habits for Home and Family. Yeah, we did.
I feel like these 7 habits, I was thinking here going like, any spouse, working with one another could learn a lot from this.
I'll tell you. Well, my 5th wife, she told me that I had begun. No, I'm kidding. but you're right. We had the Home and Family Division. But even without that, and this is selfish on my part, I've been here 29 years, and I've got a long ways to go. I'm a work in project. But the way the 7 Habits has impacted me personally, as a partner, a husband, as a parent, as a grandfather, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a son, as a sibling, it's profound. And so I say that when I say selfishly, I've been paid and I have these great positions, I've had these great roles, but the personal development, just being around this content, and I work for for FranklinCovey, so I'm proud of this, but I would tell you this even if I didn't work for them. It has had and continues to have a profound effect, and I've got a long ways to go, but to your point, absolutely, it impacts every part of your life, both personal and interpersonal and organizational.
I've listened with the intent to just listen, Todd, and hopefully our audience has as well. Where could everybody learn more about what you guys are doing, the programs, the book? Obviously, the book's easy to find, easy to Google, but give me some links or wherever we can lead people.
Easy to remember. If they'll just go to www.franklincovey.com, that's COVEY, V as in Victor, franklincovey.com, they can find, there's a search engine there. They can find anything they want there, including more of me if they're a glutton for punishment.
FranklinCovey.com, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, coming from the chief people guy, Todd Davis. Todd, pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation.
Hey guys, you know to find us, RyanIsRight.com. We'll have links to 7 Habits there, the FranklinCovey.com website, and all the highlight clips, full episode in the video. Go check it out on YouTube. Fastest growing YouTube podcast, business podcast on the planet over there. Let's do it. We'll see you next time. All right about now.
This has been Right About Now with Ryan Alford, a Radcast Network production. Visit RyanIsRight.com for full audio and video versions of the show or to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening.